It's a wonderful Die-Hard Christmas. Hey, thank you for joining me, Jerry JJ Wayne Graham, and Talking with Burritos for this Lost Christmas episode. It wasn't released then, but it's being released now. So I hope you guys enjoy it. It's just me listing all the ways or all the reasons why Die Hard is just as important of a movie to watch during the holidays as It's a Wonderful Life. John McClain is a New York cop visiting Los Angeles for the holidays when he stumbles upon a band of would-be terrorists who take over the building of his wife's employer. Now, only true fans consider Die Hard a Christmas movie. Headshots of maniacal Germans isn't exactly the true definition of a holiday movie. It's rated R, but so is Love Actually, and we love watching that every damn year. In fact, this year I watched it, but I watched the network television version. I was actually about to get up off the couch and come here in front of the computer and just veg out. But then that comes on, and my wife looks over at me as I sit there, 30 minutes in, and she's like, "Got you." I'm like, damn. And so we love watching that movie, and that's rated R, and that's just infested with filth. Even this year, my wife had a problem with it, where she's just wondering, because she hasn't seen it in a while, or she couldn't remember any of the storyline. She's not as much as a fan of it as I am, but I'm pretty sure we watch it every year. And she had a real bad reaction to the adultery storyline with Alan Richter and Annette Bening. Not Annette Bening, but Emma Thompson. She was having a problem with that one. It was she was just mad the entire time. So let's say Die Hard. You try to sell this violence-ridden film to a family undecided on what to watch after dinner and wrapping presents. As the Die Hard fan, you're pretty much going to be outvoted by everyone, except for that one guy who just won't say anything because he doesn't want to get on anyone's bad side, but he knows he wants to watch Die Hard. You'll be outvoted and stuck with watching the same old classics from the early age of black and white film. Classics such as A Christmas Carol and Scrooge, The Miracle on 34th Street. All of those films are ranging from 1935 to 1947. Grade A movies, with wholesome stories that really bring forth the true meaning of Christmas and goodwill to all humans. Not to be left off on this list of old-timey classics that we all love to watch is It's a Wonderful Life, which debuted in 1947 before A Miracle on 34th Street. It's a Wonderful Life is about a man, George Bailey, played by James Stewart, awesome James Stewart, Jimmy, who had his lifelong dreams and ambitions derailed by his duty to family, friends, and an unpromising future. Or what seemingly unpromising future. Besides the obvious differences of technicolor guns and Paul Gleason, Die Hard is no less a feel-good holiday movie than It's a Wonderful Life. And it should be on the must-watch list of every family who celebrates Christmas. So, if you're the only hope standing between a boring evening of watching feel-good movies that are way too sappy, I urge you to stick to your guns and put your foot on Grandma's neck. Give that old lady a sip of whiskey, put her down in her favorite chair, and have her enjoy some holiday action with Bruce Willis as the cowboy who saved Christmas. We have our two main protagonists, John McClain and George Bailey. See, McClain, as a New York cop, living a cop's life, he had adrenaline. He had adventure. Every day at work, especially around that time in the late 80s, was an adventure. And on the other hand, George Bailey, he wanted nothing more than a life of adventure. Settling down in a city or the town in which he grew up in was never his plan. He didn't want to take over the insurance business from his father. His brother was poised to do that. he had plans to just go off to college and to travel. Once his father died, he felt obligation to stay because they were attempting to sell off his father's business and get rid of his life's work. George Bailey was obligated to stay in the town and help because it was just something in him that he wanted to do that. He knew what he wanted to do. He knew what he felt. He didn't want to be there. He had to do that one thing. He had to be there for his father. He had to save this insurance business. It was part of his family's legacy. Now, McClain was a little bit opposite of that, where McClain was just selfish as a person. He didn't want his wife to go to work. You get the sense of the things she said, like, okay, you didn't think it was going to work out. He did not think that she would become successful. So, if you want to be a fly on the wall, it's like one of those things where she says, oh, I want to go to school. He's like, yeah, go ahead, babe. I want to go to school, or I want to go back to work. And he's like, yeah, go ahead. Never thinking that it would last, thinking that because of her family obligations, she would want to stay at home with the kids. Because sometimes, in some instances, a woman will get pregnant and have a kid and not want to return to work. And you can see that happening in this relationship where she just doesn't want to come to work. She didn't want to go to work after her first child. And then she had a second child. After they got a little bit older, she decided, you know what? I want to go back to work. I miss working. And so she goes back to work. She proposes that to McClain, and he's like, grumble. I'm a cop. I'm angry. But she's like, okay, I'm going to do it anyways because of her personality, and that's who she is. She's strong. She wasn't going to let, even McClain tell her that she wouldn't do it. But so then she gets successful, and McClain has a problem dealing with that. If you're a machismo, if you're a man's man, then yeah, she would have a problem with that because it's likely that she's making a little bit more than you and she's successful. To see that sometimes, if you're not that willing of a person to accept someone else's success as being a attribution to you guys as a couple instead of a one-up on you, then that would, cause tension within a relationship. And I'm only just saying this because, I watch a lot of television and I read and, I used to watch Maury Povich. I don't know. So you just kind of assume those things. It's totally different from George Bailey, though. George, he just didn't want to do that. He didn't want to settle down in that life, in the life of his father, basically, to walk in his footsteps. He wanted to just be everywhere, go to college and just travel and just be a traveling man instead of just someone who's just stuck in one place for the rest of his life. When he found his life partner, his wife, when he found Mary Hatch, well, he's always been in love with her ever since his high school years. He went even as far as avoiding the love of his life, Mary Hatch, in an effort to keep to his vision of living a life of adventure. If you're tied down with someone, especially if you get married and then you want to have children, and then you get tied down. You could tell that when they first met that he did not really want this relationship to work out. He tried to sabotage it in the beginning. It's that story, you grow up, you get married to someone in town, you stay in town, then you guys stay in that one place for all the rest of your life. So he knew beforehand what would happen if he fell in love with Mary. And so then they get married and, they were about to move away. They're about to just go out on an adventure. It's going to take her with her. That seems to be the decision that they made. Love wasn't going to stop them or him, because she was always a person who was supportive. You can tell she really just wanted him. She just wanted to love George. But George was still in his right. If you want to compare him to John McClain, he was selfish as well. He just wanted to do all of these things, all that he wanted to do. And even if they were in love, he just wanted her to do what he wanted to do. He still wanted to live that life of adventure, but he wanted to play it out with her, which is admirable in itself. However, that still is selfish. Never once did he ask what she wanted. So you start thinking about kids and everything like that. I'm trying to think that if the children came up, I can't reflect back that far, but I think that he had a little bit of anxiety towards that once, she announced that she was pregnant, because then that is just another thing that's going to keep them away from doing the things that he wanted to do. And it really is pretty key in the writing, whereas once they got married, they were leaving. They were on the train almost, just about to just go away, to move away from Pottersville. But then he gets word that his father is ill, and then he later dies. And then after that, the wiser Coon comes into town. He's taken over a lot of the businesses, and he wants this one business, this one stronghold, this one business that will not succumb to his slippery ways. They want to take over that insurance business. And being the oldest, John Bailey's brother was like, you know what, you have to stay. You have to take care of this. Or I think actually he hears word that the wiser's coming in and they're about to take over. They're trying to strong arm all the people of the bank, his uncle and all the other board members. And so he goes and he attends this meeting and he hears all these things that they want to do, all these changes they want to make. They basically want to take away his father's legacy. Being a man of, integrity, he's just he says, no, we will not do that. We will not sell off to you. And you could tell he did it with pain. He was pained to do it. So you have to really take into context his reaction to all this, his acceptance of his fate, because he didn't do it with a pure heart. He had a lot of animosity towards it, and he was restrained almost, in a sense where whenever he made those decisions, you can tell that it wasn't of pure heart that he did these things. That doesn't take away from him as much, because you can see that McClain was just totally just a selfish, self-righteous dickwad. When you separate like that, when someone says, okay, well, I want to move to LA to pursue better opportunities, and you're a New York cop, and a stubborn one at that, you allow her to take your children away from you just to prove a point that you're going to be strong, you're going to be the man, and I'm just going to stay here and I'm just going to let you go and do your thing. Ha ha ha. Good luck out there in LA. That's a little bit, that's even more selfish. That's like very dickish, but that was him. You could tell that that was the kind of cop that he was, or the kind of type of person that he was. He would abandon his children, even though she left. He abandoned them because he didn't want to go along. So he let them out of his grasp and let them move away. And so these two characters, if you just put them together, they do possess, George Bailey more integrity, but in their ways, they were both just selfish people. The two selfish people who just wanted what they wanted. Whether their decisions affected someone else didn't really matter, but yet less so with George Bailey and It's a Wonderful Life. He made decisions for the better good of retaining his family legacy within the town. And I guess you don't say and their responsibility to people of Pottersville, but he did it with a pang of regret. So he didn't really want to do those things. He didn't want to do it, but he had to do it. I don't know what's worse. I think they're almost equally the same. They were both just selfish. He just did it for the good, but yet he didn't feel good about it. How can you be selfless if you feel regret for doing that thing that you did? George Bailey was poised to live the rest of his life with that pang of regret. And you see that later on as the story grows and as situations occur where it just brings out what he's really feeling and what he's always felt. That's almost worse than McClain just abandoning his family, just saying like, oh, bye. Go ahead. Good luck. Yeah, these two characters are two complex individuals, selfish in their own right. But I really think that George Bailey is the worst of them. He chose just to live it and to hide it. When you hide something, that's like operating in secrecy. Where McClain was just out in the open. You had to think like Mary Hatch, she most likely knew everything that he was feeling. Nothing was ever totally fine with him. Even all the good and stuff that he did was never good enough for him. He never got that satisfaction from doing those things. And she knew and she lived it, but he never said anything. And so I think that's worse because you're affecting another person when you do that. When McClain says, see you later, sayonara, she knows. She's not sitting in L.A. wondering how he feels about the situation. She misses him, sure. You could tell certain times she looks at that picture. She misses her family. She misses them together. She knew that he was a dick. Okay. She knew that he had made a decision, and poor Mary Hatch didn't know, or she knew, but it wasn't expressed to her. And so she could hold out that hope that maybe, just maybe, he's feeling that he wants to be there, that he wants to be the husband, the father that she wants him to be. Mary wanted him to be happy. And that's the only thing she really wanted him to be. She wanted him to be happy, whether it's with the kids or with her or just in the town. She wanted him to be happy, but he never was truly happy. Oh man, that's freaking heartbreaking if you think about it. Like, darn. And did I say darn? Like, what the hell? Am I like back in 1954 or 47 when this damn thing came out? Oh, darn. I can't believe it. That's y'all damn. How about that? That's how Mary felt. Like, damn, this son of a bitch. So think about that, people. Think about it. If you sit back, watch those two movies, open your eye, and see that basically they are the same character. George Bailey and McClain are the same. Okay, now let's go on to the next one. The Wiser and Hans Gruber. It's all about the money. Okay, the Wiser, Mr. Potter, was driven by the almighty dollar. He'd already successfully bought out the town, most of the town's businesses, except for the bank, for the loan and bank owned by the Bailey family. And if you put this one out, this one thing that he was unable to do, he's unable to get George Bailey to commit to selling him this business so that he could rule over the entire town. He had that one obstacle to beat, and that was George Bailey. Now, think about George Bailey as the last lock of the safe in Diehard. Just as Hans Gruber needed to crack that last safe to get into the actual vault and execute the final stages of his brilliant plan, just as he needed to do that, the Wiser worked needlessly to find a chink in George Bailey's armor that would weaken his morale and commitment to the people of his town. And so when George's uncle lost that $8,000, it was like that scene in Die Hard when the feds cut the power to the building, enabling Hans Gruber and his crew to crack through the last obstacle, impeding the completion of their master plan. For the entire film, George Bailey, after every obstacle, he would find a way to save the bank and loan of his family. And Hans Gruber on the back end, he had that one safe cracker just sitting there working. Hans Gruber is doing his thing out here, while in the background, that computer, the black guy with the glasses, the computer whiz, he was back there trying to crack this safe. And he's breaking through layer. It's like maybe I think 4 layers of this safe, or maybe 3. I'm not sure. And he gets to that one thing, and he needs to get into that $8,000 to get to where the bonds are kept. And so for the entire film, that's like Mr. Wiser working in the background, trying to find a way to have Bailey fail at something, to find a way to get to Bailey, to get Bailey to commit to selling off his business. This entire film, you had him working needlessly, working, trying to find a way to inch towards a way to get this guy to freaking break down. Every moment when they were losing, I think something had happened. The last bank sold off, or something in town, or, the Wiser bought something. It was a dire moment in the film where they thought that, okay, all the townspeople, all their money were invested with George Bailey and their company. And so George Bailey just comes up with this ingenious plan to give people money. He gave them money from their own, from their own stash, from their own account, to help the people of the town so that they could afford things for Christmas. I think it was around Christmas time. He worked out a way where he's like, okay, well, we can't give you, only have this many dollars. And if you can take this much, I'm able to give you this much, because, I guess it's like sort of like the stock exchange. If you had all your money invested in this one place, and then the stock exchange goes down, the dollar amount goes down, and you see yourself losing money. And so you panic. And so you want to go and rush to get all of your all of your money out of the bank. Well, it was sort of like this with them, where this event happens caused by the Wiser, and all these people want to pull out their money, but George Bailey has to convince them not to. But that if they just remained with the bank and not pulled all their money, then he would be able to help them capitalize on their investments. That was all about a moment of panic, but he was able to calm them, to get them to realize that taking all the money out is not the answer. If you just want something for now, you want your Christmas, you want to go buy your presents, then just take out what you need. And with that, he was able to save that property management that they have, because he was building people houses. So that's of quality, that his family, that his father was known for, just helping people. So he's able to maintain that. But you can always tell that even though he was helping people, he just wasn't happy. With this, the Wiser, he was working. The Wiser was always working. And even that property where he was building the houses, the Wiser had tried to do something to undermine him. And he was able to prevail. And they always have these cut scenes back to the Wiser sitting at his desk like, oh, this damn George, I'm just frustrated at this damn George Bailey who has found some way to thwart his plans again, to overcome this obstacle that he set in front of him. So like Hans Gruber. So then think about it. And so as Hans Gruber, he's trying to plan meticulously this freaking kind of bank heist / terrorist event. The Wiser had George Bailey. Hans Gruber had freaking John McClain. Just at every turn, just undermining him. Everything, every little plan that he had plans that you go in, you do this, you strike one, you strike two, you strike three, and then we get out. I mean, you get the ball, and then boom, you hit one out of the park. They were just going to get out of there. Scott's free. It was foolproof, except for John McClain. So John McClain was George Bailey to the Wiser. He was just this one little entity obstructing his success, the completion of his master plan. They too, Hans Gruber and the Wiser, they just had that one thing where they just couldn't beat, that one obstacle, that one thing standing before them and their plan to either take over the town or take over that building. So I'll go back to that one scene where the beat cop shows up at the tower, at the building, and he goes inside and he investigates. The guard at the welcoming desk enables him to walk the lobby, allows him access to anything else. He can go upstairs, he can go anywhere. So this beat cop called Winslow from the Family Matters, but he wasn't this character in here. But was he a cop in Family Matters too? I believe he was a cop in Family Matters as well. And so he was a cop in this movie. And Reginald Vale Johnson, that's his name. So just to give you a visual, if you know Family Matters, then you will know that his name was called Winslow. And that's what I like to call him, because he was the same thing. He was a cop. He's there to investigate, and he sees no issue with anything. And plus, you see as many floors as there are and how expansive this lobby area is. And he's just like, okay, well, everything checks out for me. And he's about to leave. So he's driving away in a patrol car, and Bruce Willis, John McClain, just killed a guy. And so he thought, okay, I need to get this guy's attention. He's just leaving. So he throws the guy out of this, 30-story building, and it lands right on the cop's car. And so he starts back. He goes crazy. Insanity ensues where he's driving backwards. The people inside the building start shooting at him. And so he's driving away just backwards. Oh, crazy, crazy, crazy. Oh, the shit has hit the fan finally. And that scene was actually a one-up where Hans Gruber and or the Wiser of the Wiser of this story was one-upping John McClain. You didn't see much of the one-up in It's a Wonderful Life. Kinda, but it only came to him. The one-up only came to him when he had an opportunity to one-up. When he had a good opportunity to one-up George Bailey. The Wiser couldn't one-up him because everything he did, George Bailey would overcome. Any obstacle that he put in front of him, he would overcome. He would find a way, a solution to the problem. But with this one, instance in Die Hard, but with this instance in Die Hard, John McClain called 911. He got them to send someone out. And so Hans Gruber, to one up him, set up an elaborate trap. Kind of like an elaborate trap, where he had everything already planned out. Okay, guy at the gate will be as welcoming as possible, no alarm, let the cop inside the building, let him look at things. Everything should be fine. There is no evidence of a break-in, no evidence of people being held upstairs hostage, So it was perfect, let them in. So he's like, okay, you call the cops. Then I have this backup plan. You let them in, let the cop look around. And, initially, and so in the end, you would have to kill the cop if he notices anything, but the cop didn't notice anything. Why would he? Everything looked fine. Everything was quiet. It looked like a quiet night inside one of these empty buildings where everyone goes home basically almost at 5 or 6, a regular work day. So he sends them home, and so boom, this happens. And so you always had that one, and so boom, this happens, and now the authorities have been alerted, and now here comes another obstacle for Hans Gruber that John McClain initially initiated. So you have those. So you have the one up. So you have to, so a lot of this was one up on them. So with that, he was able to one up him. And so you had a couple of these one ups happen in this movie. In Die Hard, at least, because the other one up was when Hans Gruber disguised himself. Hans Gruber thought he had the one up on McClain again when he was on the roof and John McClain finds him. And so he being a theater actor, but you don't know if Hans Gruber was a theater actor. However, he did play an American very well. Alan Richter, right? Alan Richter. So he's up there on the roof, and so he disguises himself as being one of the hostages or someone who worked inside the building. But then you think like, okay, well, this guy's about to shoot him because McClain gives him a gun. So so McClain, plays it off like, okay, dude, here you go. You gonna follow me? We're gonna go out here. We're gonna do this thing. And so he turns his back once, and Hans Gruber is about to shoot him, and he realizes, no bullets. One up. See, so it's like one of those things where the one up was a major component of their relationship between the Wiser and George Bailey, and then it was always a cat and mouse game, or did we just call the one up? Where John McClain and the Hans Gruber always had, this back and forth between them, see who can one up the other in their situation, as well as the Wiser and George Bailey. The Wiser always wanted to one up George Bailey by putting, some impossible odds in front of him. But then what happens? George Bailey one ups him, except in that moment where his uncle loses that $8,000. And then guess who has the one up? The Wiser. And the response and the one up from George Bailey doesn't come till after the end of the movie, after this certain reveal. But we'll get to that later. So let's go further on to another comparison. We got 5 of them, people, and we're on number 2, and that was the first one was the comparison between Hans Gruber. The first one was the comparison between John McClain and George Bailey, the two protagonists of these individual films, these two stories. And then the second one was, the comparisons between Hans Gruber and the Wiser of It's a Wonderful Life, played by Lionel Barrymore, I believe. Yes. So we're going to go on to the next one. Then the next comparison I want to give to you as to why It's a Wonderful Life is basically Die Hard for the 21st century. Let's go there. Let me get that. Okay, you have You have Mary Hatch and Mary Hatch. I'm sorry, I'm just typing this right now because I changed it. I called her Miss Bailey because I didn't know her name. Okay, so you'd have, for this next one, we have number 3, we have Mary Hatch and Holly Gennaro. These two women were exactly the opposite of one another in the stereotypical roles women play in movies. However, they both present the strength necessary to not only keep the foundations of their families strong, but to also allow the men in their lives to come to the realization themselves that what matters isn't careers or where you thought you would be in life, but that life is now. Life is how you live in the now. And what you've accomplished and what you will accomplish with your family there to support you is what's more important. Okay, so we went over a little bit with Mary Hatch and how dedicated she was to her husband, to George Bailey. And you think about her role. You know, she was like a little spunky teenager who loved George Bailey from a distance. You know, and then she had an opportunity to actually date George Bailey. And bada bing, bada boom, they fell in love. I love this one scene in the movie. I just can't really think about it. Oh, man. Oh, yeah. They have this one scene, which is weird in a movie of that time of the 1940s, where George Bailey has entered the home because he goes there to court her, I believe, at her house. Her mother calls down, is like, what is he doing here? Inquires in the house, and she just yells out, he's making violent love to me, mother. And I had one of those, oh my gosh. I had one of those moments. I really did, because I never really hear something coming from that, because this is my first time actually watching It's a Wonderful Life. And I'm like, what? They say these things back then? Because normally a lot of these movies, such as, you know, It's a Wonderful Life and all them, they're very conservative, you know, and Mary is a proper gal. She's a very, very proper gal, and she reminds me a little bit of like Archie, you know, Archie and Betty. She yells this out, and it really takes me aback. You have to realize the context in which she's coming from. She's loved George Bailey for all of her life, and if you paid attention at the beginning of the movie, when George Bailey suffers from he's deaf in 1 year because he saved his brother from an accident when he was young. He saved his brother from drowning, actually. And so he was deaf in 1 ear, and George Bailey was working in this shop, and little Mary Hatch was there, and he was helping her, getting her a drink, I think like a little soda or something, or Coke. You know, they were just having a little talk, and she whispers in his deaf ear, oh my goodness, people, this is awesome. She whispers in his deaf ear, you know, I will love you till the day you die. So poetic. Think about that in that context. So you know she loves him all her life. She's loved him all her life. But he's been a man of he just goes off to college. He leaves. He doesn't look back. He doesn't want to look back. But then he comes back for a visit, and, you know, after graduating, and I think that's when he gets caught up in town business. He sees Mary, and he falls in love with her, but he doesn't want to fall in love with her. Extenuating circumstances with his father arises, and that really just throws a kink in his armor. But so you know that Mary is just in love with George. She's in love with George. That's all. She doesn't care about anything else. She loves George. Not to say that she wasn't worth anything, because you could tell she's a proper smart gal, but she loved George. And so at that time, George was like, oh, he had big plans. And I just want to leave. I want to get the hell up out of here. And she was down for that. And they were poised to go, just like I mentioned before, and right before the honeymoon. But then, boom. Right as they're at like the train station, they're about to leave, and they get this news about their father being ill. And so he has to stay, and they can't go. And yeah, I think, oh yeah, that's what happens. Okay, people, let's go, let's bring this all around. And so I mentioned before where the town kind of went into a little bit of a recession. And so what did George have to do? George put up his own money to help them. He did a lot of these things that were selfless, but yet he was still selfish. He didn't feel good about it. Man, see, that's where it goes around. He used his money, his honeymoon money, to stay in the town to help the people during their time of need when the bank was going through financial problems. Oh man, that was a good one. That was a good one. And so, and what is it? Mary just stays with them. Mary is with him. Goes along, and she knows that he really wanted this trip. She knows everything, but she's willing to be there with him. And no, not willing. She is there with him. And there was this story, another storyline about this raggedy old house that was abandoned, and she thought to own it one day. And then one day they bought it. They were able to buy it. And she wanted, that was her thing. That was her dream to make a house a home with her husband. And not to say that Gina, that's not her name. God damn it. No, they're damn people, Jerry. What are their names? Holly. It wasn't say Miss Holly Gennaro McClain. Not to say that she wasn't that type of person. But I got a sense, it's all about, like, that's what movies are cool for. You don't have to give us everything. Let us use our imagination. In my imagination, Holly Gennaro was a successful person before then. She went to school. She was educated and everything. She married John. And they were living happily ever after. He was a cop, probably in the beat cop at that, just patrolling and doing things like that. Then he gets detective later on. And so he's away from the house more. And then boom, they have a child. And so now she's at home a lot of days by herself at home with the child while he's out fighting crime and having adventures. You have her there. And so then, she pops out another kid. Then, she's not satisfied with that life. She's like, this is not me. I am smart. I am accomplished. And my kids aren't going to hurt if I go to school. If I go back to work. We have the means to be able to take care of them. She decides, hey, John, when he comes home one day after a long day of just, actually, he got off at like 5, but he comes home at 9 because he was at the bar drinking. We're going to pose it like that. And she tells him, like, hey, I want to go back to work. He's like, what? And so they have a fight. Then they make love. And then he comes home one day and she's like, I got a job. And so then, so he just can't really get pissed. They have to make things work. And so, but then starting out from there begins their rocky relationship. And she sticks around for a little bit and she's successful. She becomes very successful. It's like, wow, I love my job. I love what I'm doing. Everything is working out. Kids are taken care of. I am home by at least 6. We're doing homework. I put them to sleep, but John is still never there. An opportunity arises and she wants to take it, and it will benefit the entire family and not just her. It would benefit all of them. John McClain could be a cop somewhere else in LA if he wants to. Equally as fucked up as New York, but not New York at that time. New York was a fucking cesspool. And so you would assume that she's there for that and she wants to be there for him, but he's not really there for her. So she makes that decision upon herself that I'm doing this, and either you can come or you can go. You can keep this family together, put it in his hands. That's the thing, people. If you really want to feel less guilty about something, a decision that you and someone else has to make, put it in their hands and have them decide. Especially if it's a difficult one like that. So he decides basically, no, you can go, then I'll stay. Good luck. Because he's a punk. He's a good person, but that male pride. You don't mess with the dude in his pride. And so she leaves. That could have been the best for him or maybe the worst. But then you have this one moment that brings them back together, makes them realize that, hey, I still love you. But she, all the time, even though she's away, she's not dating anyone, anything like that, she still loves him because she's still married. Just living in different parts of the country. But they still love each other. They are both strong women. And they knew what was best for their families. Not exactly what was best for them. They knew what was best for their families. They both took it upon themselves to make that thing happen. Mary wanted her house. She wanted her house and her family, and she was able to get that. And Holly wanted her job. She wanted her job and family, and she was able to get that. And it was up to the man to decide where he wanted to be in that equation. Either you can be happy or you can be sad about it. That was the thing. You had to think as a family instead of thinking for yourself. And a lot of times with these two characters, with John and George, they were just thinking about themselves. They both had strong women beside them. Let's go through that. You know what I'm saying? You see how I flipped that? That's, it's that feminist thing right there, we beside them, not behind them, beside them. Because you have to say, you look at it, Mary worked alongside George. She was there to help him be as successful as he wanted to be. So same as Holly. Holly would have been the same thing, but the life of a detective is very cumbersome. And McClain was always away. And so she did what was best for her and her family. And that could have been just her and then the 2 kids, because John wasn't there. A lot of times you think about 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm a detective. I go to work. I don't really come home, and I don't have to because I'm a man. Boom. That's another comparison. Now let's go on to number 4. Let's go into another one I have. We have The Guardian Angel and Carl Winslow. Who was he? What the hell is his name in this movie? Shit. As Sergeant Al Powell. Okay, so we have the Guardian Angel and Al Powell, like Powell, So the Guardian Angel, you have him. You know, he basically is an angel from heaven. It's a Wonderful Life. And then you have Carl Winslow. Damn it, no, Al Powell, the cop in Diehard. Like, think of these two as equally as guardian angels. I'll say, so we have the Guardian Angel in the movie It's a Wonderful Life, and we have this bridge, and on this bridge we see George come up, and he's like done. He wants to end it all. He's gonna jump off of this bridge and into that river. He's out there. He's right outside he's right outside the edge of the bridge. He climbs out there on this ledge, and he's about to jump inside this frozen river. It's not even frozen, but it's still running, but it's cold as snot. So he's out there. He's ready to jump, and he looks right next to him, and there's another guy right there. He's another guy. It's this guy. He's just another guy. He's just sitting there like, oh, look, I'm about to jump too. It comes a moment where the Guardian Angel jumps into the river. Instead of jumping to his death, George jumps in to save the Guardian Angel. The true nature of George Bailey comes into action, where he jumps in after him. Instead of thinking about himself and killing himself, he jumps in to save someone. George Bailey has a Guardian Angel. And in Die Hard, the Guardian police officer, that Al Powell, is John McClane's Guardian Angel. One scene sticks out to me in this instance on the roof when John McClain is basically about to give up. He is tired. He's just done with. His chips were up. He knew that time wasn't on his side, and he wasn't going to make it home for Christmas. John McClain breaks down, shows a sign of weakness. His voice softens. He's on the radio. He asks him, Al, if he was there, and he asked the police officer to relay a message to his wife. What would be his final words to his wife and children? And the police officer says, no, John. Afterwards, after he's done, after McClain is done with his message, the police officer says, no, John, you tell him yourself. This is the dire straits of the movie when George Bailey, after being denied help from the Wiser for the misplaced AK, was truly at his lowest point. He has fought the entire time against the actions of the Wiser. $8,000 were missing of other people's money, of their money. And that money was going to keep them going because there was an assessor there, an auditor, and they had to have that money to pay them off so they can stay in business. He was truly at his lowest point. He went to the Miser for help, and this was the one-up for the Miser. The Miser knew. If you haven't watched it, just watch the movie. This was one-up for the Miser because he goes to the Miser and asks him for money. But the Miser's like, no. Why should I give this to you when every time I asked you for help, I asked you to help me, to ask you to sell this to me, you wouldn't do it. You were stubborn. He said no. George Bailey was at wit's end. Well, he went home, blew up at his family. I think he started drinking a little bit, and then he just went to jump off he went to the bar after that, after blowing up at his family, and he went to the bridge to commit suicide. John McClain, he's not gonna commit suicide. He's gonna kill some mofos. He had an end game, and this was it. And he was going to most likely die. He most likely would die. It was a suicide mission, but he wasn't going to commit suicide. John McClain was a badass who planned to end Hans Gruber even if he died hard trying. You know what I'm saying? And so when George Bailey has this Guardian Angel come to help him, and I think for this movie, for Die Hard, the cop was his Guardian Angel. All through this process, he had someone he could talk to. Because what if he didn't have anyone to talk to? What if it was just him up on that roof and he didn't, this would have been a totally different movie, totally different scenario. Because this man gave him a little bit of hope. Because you have that voice, you have that person there in your head. You have someone talking to you. And if you know about angels, you have people talking to you from the heavens. This comes as a feeling. At least he had someone kind of in his ear helping him. He had that little bit, that voice, that angelic voice helping him that he could talk to, someone that he could talk to who wasn't yelling at him. He was just trying to calm him in his situation and give him hope that, he's going to make it out of this. For number 4, we have the guardian angel in Carl Winslow, or Al Powell, the police officer on duty that night. So we have those 2 characters. And if you think about that, so that's number 4. So let's recap just one more time. Recap. These are 4 different comparisons as to why Die Hard is just as great a movie, Christmas movie, as It's a Wonderful Life. You have number 1, you have John McClain and George Bailey, basically 2 selfish people who just want adventure in their life. They want something more from their lives than what they're getting. We have Hans Gruber and The Wiser, where it's all about the money. They want money, they want power, and it's the execution of one plan, one master plan. But yet they have these 2 individuals who are impeding their progress, and that's George and John McClain. Okay, and then number 3, we have the women in their lives. 2 strong women in different stereotypical roles played by women in movies. One of them is a housewife, and the other woman is a businesswoman. She's a successful, I think, marketing agent or something like that. I'm not sure what she is. And in the number 4, we have the guardian angels. We have the guardian angel, actually, in It's a Wonderful Life. And you have Al Powell, the police officer, the beat police officer who helps John McClain when he's on the roof. He gives John McClain a voice, someone to talk to when he's on the roof. And the guardian angel who basically saves George from killing himself by jumping inside a river, a cold freezing river. We're going to number 5, which is not really a comparison, but it's kind of like a comparison. It's called Seeing the Truth of What Really Matters. Nothing really matters. So the real moral of both tales is to appreciate those around you. Your friends and family will always be there to support you. And although life might not progress as planned, you make adjustments. You compromise, and you find what you sought after for so long in all those who love you the most. Both McClain and George Bailey had to lose what was most important for them to realize that they, all along, have been selfish in their ways and in their thinking. They ignored what was really important because they were always looking ahead for what the future has in store for them, the individual, and not them as a father, a husband, and a friend. For George Bailey, it was the help that he and his father gave out to the people of Bedford Falls, aka Pottersville. He never blinked an eye when needing to help his fellow townspeople, but he always committed his best efforts to ensuring their stability. When he lost the town and everything, as the guardian angel was fulfilling his wish to have never been born, he came to a stark realization that his life was perfect the way it was with him alive. McClain realized early upon seeing his wife for the first time in months that he missed her and his children. And those would-be terrorists threatened to take that away from him, the opportunity to make amends with his wife and with his family. If you think about the holidays and what they're about, yes, it's about being with your family and spending time with your family and enjoying that time. And why not watch It's a Wonderful Life and then Die Hard, or vice versa? You get the same vibe from both of them. The storylines are almost identical. And yeah, Jeff, I was able to put it together. And so that's why I really did think about that, and it really made me ponder this. Like, okay, these 2 movies are the same. Yes, one is a rated R feature, and the other one is a really good PG movie, safe for the family and all. But I'm not saying little Tommy, age 8, should be sitting around watching Die Hard. But, at age 8, I was watching like Phantasm and movies like that with my pops. Actually, he put those on to scare us away. But every now and then I would get curious and stay around for Lethal Weapon and movies like this, Die Hard, where I did watch it with them. And no, it wasn't appropriate, but, it didn't ruin me. Maybe it gave me more of an appreciation for action movies. For that, I just want to leave you guys with a quote from It's a Wonderful Life. It's all that you take with you is all that you've given away. Give a little. It doesn't have to be physical. It doesn't have to be money or anything like that. But if you just give love and gratitude and respect. I know this is an unconventional episode, but it's one of those things where I had this episode done, but then with school, with everything, not even school, with work and everything, just kind of, this Christmas time just really hit me rather fast. And just like that, it was over. We were supposed to record this week. We were supposed to record that week. And we had all these plans, and it just didn't come to fruition. Didn't happen. Not making plans, not making time for the podcast. But if anything, that's why I'm doing this one, because I was like, okay, well, so that's why I'm recording this today like this, as a single unit. And you might hear a couple of more of these. Things are changing. Things change around, change. They always change. It seems like every year this damn podcast, things are changing. And I guess the strength is to go with the change. Like a flowing stream. You go with the change and you make adjustments as you go along, but you don't have to really jump out. You see that waterfall, you might have to bail, and that's usually when, things are really dire. But for the most part, it's just like a current, and you just have to ride that current until you really see the edge of that waterfall, and you see that there is no end. But okay, it might be a rock over here or a rock over there or a branch, something that you can hold on to that will save you from going over the waterfall and plummeting to your death. A little difficult to record by yourself, but I've noticed that if you have material, if you're prepared, then it goes a little bit smoother. And again, I did plan this episode way back in December, and I've recorded it over the last 2 weeks in January. So this is just me trying to get something out on the last day of January to start into February anew. So I thank you guys for listening. And if you're still around, hopefully this big gap of time did not deter you away from the podcast. Hopefully we're still in your queue and you still know we're here. And if not, maybe we'll find you again. And if we do, hey, what's up? But it's cool. I like doing this. I still realize that I do enjoy podcasting. Podcasting is dope. It allows me to talk and get my thoughts out, because I hate just sitting around with thoughts in my head or writing them down in notebooks. Ask my wife about all of my notebooks. They just go in a trunk somewhere, and then they hide until I discover them years later and just wince at, like, what the hell was I thinking? It's fun. So I still like doing this. There still is passion there, people. There really is. And I refuse to let it die. But I'm not going to bore you with any more of this crap. This has been Talking with Burritos, where the plate's full, but we're always open for suggestions. So if you want to comment on this episode, just go to talkingwithburritos.com, and or you can comment on this episode. If you listen to it and you're just browsing on Facebook, you can comment there. But thank you for listening. Thank you for hanging in there. I'm sure going to hang in there. If you guys stick around, then I'm going to stick around, period. That's what it is. But, like I said, things change. Sometimes things change for the better, and they do change for the better. I can see even my boy Chris is doing big things with this podcast. Check it out. Speaking of which, check out that podcast. They're having fun with his friends, and that's what this was. That's what this thing started out to be. But, over time, it morphs into different things. It will morph into something else. This year might be different from next year. But this year, keep doing the podcast episodes that we've always done. Keeping it fun, keeping it light, and just try to add a little bit of humor to this otherwise freaking... Don't watch the news. Don't turn on the news. Don't read anything like that. Do it to be informed, but oh my goodness. Then after that, just try to... Because it's just all just negativity out there right now, people, and don't let that affect you and your daily life. Try to stay positive and think for the better. Okay, you guys, I'm done lecturing. I am Jerry, JJ Wayne Graham, and that's a wrap, but not a burrito.